Welcome back. Yeah, totally. So Erica has many awesome roles. She does psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, and then she also has an amazing organization called Nest that offers harm reduction. So tonight she's going to be sharing a great presentation on psychedelic hospitality, which I think is a term you created, yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
great.
it should exist. So
So I'm super excited for her to introduce us to psychedelic hospitality and how that contributes to creating an intentional container to explore psychedelics. Is there more you want the audience to know about you or what you'll be offering tonight?
no, I mean I'll go into a little bit more of an introduction of who I am and how I got here, merging, my two great loves of psychedelics and hospitality together, to create a model that anybody can use and access in their communities, whether it is in clinical space or recreational space.
Yeah, wonderful. So I imagine you all will have lots of inspiration and questions come up throughout her presentation. So please save that for the end of the night. We will have time for an audience Q&A. She'll offer her presentation. I'll come back for a brief interview, and then we'll turn it to the audience for your questions. Okay? And then join them now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And so thanks for coming and joining me while we kind of talk about psychedelic hospitality and the art of crafting transformational containers. It is also Global Psychedelic Week this week. So there's a whole bunch of talks going on in 60 countries and 130 talks around 350 happening this week around psychedelics in different local communities. I always like giving a bit of an agenda. I know this kind of looks overwhelming right now, but we're going to go through all of these different aspects of psychedelic hosting. And I hope that you enjoy it. And we're going to start with a little bit of an intro. Who I am. My name is Erica Siegal. I have been working in psychedelics for the past 15 years. I have been an advocate and consumer of psychedelics for over 20 years in many different forms. I actually started my career in hospitality and was at the Cornell Hotel School and worked in Vegas and have always been really looking at ways to create spaces and experiences for transformation. And that kind of crossed over into social work and then into psychedelic care. But always with this aspect of how do we create safe containers? How do we create containers that are all encompassing for our guests, for our community, for our loved ones? And what can we do to help kind of like push the goalpost forward, especially here at District216, where, this is a psychedelic social club. I feel like a lot of people who are in the audience have psychedelic experience. It's kind of not the naive, but more kind of in this, how do I use this better? How do I use this for healing? How do I use psychedelics for personal growth, and how do I share that with the people that I love in a way that is safe and authentic? Psychedelic hospitality is the art and practice of creating environments where altered states can unfold safely, meaningfully, and with dignity. So we are integrating harm reduction, presence, and care into every single layer of the experience. From the time we think, I want to take psychedelics with my community, or I want to go to an ayahuasca ceremony. Like, that is when the intention really starts. It doesn't start when you take the medicine. And so once the decision is there, once the idea is there, like that spark starts, those embers start to burn. And so somebody who is a psychedelic host is not theoretically a therapist or a shaman or a guru, but they're like a creator and holder of a resonant field. Really what we're trying to look at is like, what is this energetic, not just the physical container that we are in, but what is also the energetic container? And who are the people that are responsible for holding that? And what I have found in some of the most well-held spaces is it's actually the entire community that is holding it. And so how do we translate our attention and our intention and attention to the needs of the community. Because it's what we've all learned from psychedelics is even if we're having solo experiences, we integrate in community. We don't exist in a silo. And so what we're doing is kind of moving beyond just, I've worked in harm reduction for the past 12 years, doing crisis mental health response at music festivals and events. And a lot of those times we're like sitting there waiting for the crisis to come up. And then we like address it when it comes up. And for this is how do we prevent that? How do we actually create intention and resonant fields for us to like prevent the harm from occurring? And so the question that I'm going to ask to all of you to consider this evening is, what makes a space feel safe enough for transformation? What makes you feel safe enough to be able to drop in? And a lot of times that involves so much like commonality. It might just be an all women's group or an all men's group because those are the environments that feel safe for you. It could be something that's all elders. It could be something I've done work with the Jewish community and done Jewish healing circles using ketamine. And the energy is different when you get an solo identified group together to be able to create those fields. I also want to kind of go back up to the top of the slide and express gratitude for Jacob and for all of you for your presence tonight and for District216, along with the full moon tonight. A shout out for the moon. And for the land that we're on and the fact that we are safe and privileged and have access to psychedelic medicines and the access to be able to look at ourselves and really try to heal and improve whatever our ailments are. And I also want to let you guys know that this is a confidential space and that there are no stupid questions. And so if something comes up or if during the Q&A you want to share an experience about either something that you saw that needed improvement or something that was like really special and like really kind of like made the like shift into this transformational community, I'd love to hear some of those stories as well. So the philosophy of psychedelic hospitality is creating transformational spaces that both require intention and safety. And so psychedelic hospitality is like the middle path between sacred and secular, between therapeutic use and ceremonial use and recreational use. It asks, how do we welcome the unknown with enough structure to stay safe and enough softness to let it change us? And so a psychedelic host or hostess really kind of reframes this idea of a sitter or a facilitator, not as a authority, but as somebody who prepares, receives, and tends to the guests as they encounter the vast landscape of their own being and what it means to be in community. And so I kind of created these like 6 pillars of anybody who's going to be a psychedelic host. The first would be the intention, right? Detailed elements of the gathering all have care and attention. Consent, that we're communicating our boundaries and agreements and making sure that everyone along the journey has informed choice and autonomy. Presence, that you or your team, the host or support team, is always available 24 hours a day during the entire experience, that are showing up in a way that feels grounded, regulated, and compassionate. Being transparent, like really having honest and clear communication around roles, risks, and expectations. For some of the parties that I've helped design in making sure that we have transparency, it's really nice to kind of set the stage around dosing. I like to say that this is, a social gathering, which means we're going to remain at a social dosing level and not shoot the moon. Because when you shoot the moon, You have people non-consensually sit for you because you are no longer able to take care of yourself. And so being really transparent about what the intention is, right? Intention and the transparency, right? We're going to be at this experience for 2 or 3 days, which means that if you have the wherewithal to not be high for a week. So like, you can leave when you need to leave, when the host no longer can host. And so making sure that you're transparent around who's going to be there, how people are showing up, what the actual vibe is. And we can kind of go into like psychedelic branding, which I think District216 does such a great job of creating such a beautiful kind of psychedelic ambiance wherever they are. There's also cultural integrity, right? Making sure that we are acknowledging our own lineage, that we are avoiding appropriating other people's cultures, and that we're practicing reciprocity in some way, shape, or form. I have a client that I've worked with for the past couple of years, helping design private events. This client is very eco-sensitive and has in all of their event riders has a 0 single-use policy. And so that just means it's like a lot of cloth napkins, no paper towels, none of that stuff, right? Everything has to be washed and reused. And so if where your values are can be translated into making sure that you're hosting in a way that feels authentic and generative and not extractive. And then integration, making sure that we're doing aftercare, that we're following up with individuals, that we oftentimes what I like to do is encourage some sort of transitional object, some sort of gift at the end of the experience so people can take home a memory with them. If anybody kind of grew up in the like bar and bat mitzvah game, everybody has like the t-shirt or the mug or even when you're at festivals, Lucidity did such a great job of creating the map danas, and right, you can see other people who have been at Lucidity, and it kind of creates this bonding tribalism of like, oh, I was also at that amazing experience. And so making sure that in these spots of integration and aftercare that we're creating meaning and memory. What is the anatomy of building a psychedelic container? And the container is not the physical container, but it's like woven from these agreements and these intentions that we're setting into, why are we taking medicine? Why are we engaging in community practice? And an excuse could be, it's really fun and I want to get together with my friends and make memories, right? It doesn't have to be I'm sick and I need to heal. It's like, what happens when we get back to our baseline? Then do we just stop the engagement in psychedelic practice? No, it's like we get to enjoy ecstatic states of joy. We get to go out and have new connective experiences and make these like really lasting formative memories with friends and community. And so we're going to go through the design, infrastructure, prep, arrival, relational field, and kind of integration over the next few slides of what makes a good psychedelic container. And these containers include physical bodies, like the people who are showing up, the emotional bodies, all of the emotions that people show up to these events with, the like energy that swirls between us, and like the ethical space that we hold with each other. And that's actually a community value, is, having a place where we ethically feel safe, where we know we're not going to be touched in a way that we don't want to be touched, that we're not going to be shamed or yelled at or demeaned in any sort of way, and really being able to communicate that those agreements and boundaries with the people who are attending. So the first thing is design, and I love psychedelic design. There's a great new organization that specializes in psychedelic design, but design's not just the decoration. It's like the entire nervous system engineering. It's how we show up in the space. It's the environment as a co-facilitator. And so using the environment to integrate and manipulate to meet the needs, right? I think Lodo Studios, I think Jacob, you do a great job here, being able to dim the lighting, change the temperature, like really being able to control and manipulate the environment to meet the needs of the guest, right? Having extra blankets, having extra socks and slippers if it's going to be a cold night out. People get stoked if you have like a basket of like warm, fuzzy socks and everybody's outside, like hanging out by a fire. There's just like little bits of unexpected hospitality that you can use to create lasting memory in these expanded states. Using aesthetic psychology, so color palettes, shapes, textures, and flow to match the intentional container, right? If I'm throwing a 40th birthday rave, like all of the decor, the design, everything about that is going to be completely different than an ayahuasca ceremony, right? And we can already evoke those thoughts around what does my ideal container look like? Like if I were to design an ideal psychedelic container, some people it might be, a fish show on a beach. And for other people, it might be like a solo journey in the mountains. And for other people, it could be, like dance floor at a 80,000 person rave, which to me sounds like a nightmare to like be that crowded but like other people is like, nope, that is the thing for me. And so what we need to understand is if we are going to be a host or if we're working with a client and we're working on a production team, like what is the design? What's the intention of it? Is it to get together with friends and like have connective experiences? Great. What's the branding that goes with that? How can we create that so there's a theme and a thread through the container? I'm a big fan. People who have been to some of the events that I have hosted define my brand as floppy luxury. Right? It's like very luxurious and velvet couches and silk pajamas, but also like no heels, like nothing, right? Like no makeup, like big fur coats. Uggs all the time. It's rare that you'll find me in uncomfortable shoes. But like, what is your aesthetic and how do you want to infuse that in a way that feels authentic to the containers that you create? Also, what's your substance of choice? Right? If you're going to host a birthday party or host a wedding or a bachelorette party or just some sort of like a New Year's party, right? Those have different aesthetics, but for your authentic brand, how can you create a through line into everything that you do? And so the design principles would be like the containment. How do we hold the space? Cohesion, like are we all doing it together or are there fractures within the community and the party? Being flexible. Like what happens if the DJ that is supposed to be playing on Friday night is playing a set that like nobody is on the dance floor with? Like, do you as the host have the ability and flexibility to go to the person who is on the decks and be like, yo man, you need to slow it down. Like, and do that in a way that is well received, knowing that what you're all trying to create is a cohesive resonant field. And then symbolism. I love like little symbols, little branding. I'll bring up fish again because it's easy, but like, when you see anybody, the fish logo is very subtle. It's like donut circles. And if you're not a fish fan, you wouldn't know it was a fish thing. But like, if you are, you're like, oh, you're part of my tribe. And so to be able to create some symbolism around who you are that you can share with people. And this is huge at Burning Man and huge in the music festival world of creating necklaces and branding and pins and little things to share with your friends so they have memories of you. And I think that is a huge part of the design element that I think is can be translated not only from, a ketamine clinic, but all the way to like hosting in a living room. And so when you are hosting, You can't do it alone. Oh, please don't do it alone. Even if you're sitting like the one-on-one sitting, that's why there's two therapists or a support person, is because if you are in a situation and you find yourself alone in that situation, it can get really hard if something challenging comes up. If somebody slips and falls and cuts their arm on broken glass and like you're holding a towel on them, somebody needs to go call 911, right? That's why having groups of people is really important in psychedelic spaces. And so having a well-designed hosting team strengthens the container, right? The person who's doing all of the aesthetic designs might also be the person who's like, doing all of the RSVPs and all of the dietary stuff and the meal planning. But you can't, be in the kitchen cutting up fruit and hosting at the same time. And so developing a team, usually of 5 people, whether it's volunteers or friends, and knowing who those people are, knowing that hey, I'm the sober person at the party this time. If anybody's having an issue, please, I'm here for you. Right, making sure that I've been to environments before where there has been 0 sober people at the party, and it can be really scary when something goes wrong. But, good hosting isn't accidental. It's engineered well, so the guests and the participants don't even know it's happening behind the scenes. The goal is for it to feel magical. The goal is it to feel like every single space, if you're going from a cocktail party to a dinner to the after party, walking into any one of those spaces and having dirty glasses sitting on tables or candles not lit or something like that, it actually breaks the container for the people who are engaged in the experience. And so if you have people, going ahead and cleaning up behind, you can actually create an entire environment where it feels like it's magic. It feels like things are just appearing as you discover them. And so there's a lot of logistics that goes into this, including flow and timing based on number of attendees, based on length of experience. I've done everything from, a couple hour afternoon ketamine circle all the way to 7 days on a boat in the Aegean Sea. And what the logistics look like when you're on a boat for 7 days, or when you're on multiple boats for 7 days and the party location keeps changing. There is, what's the type of medicine, what's the setting, who's the facilitator, what's the budget, right? Because we can go anywhere from, $50 a person-ish, if you're talking about cacao, to a little cacao ceremony, all the way to events that are in the multi-million dollars for budgets for weddings and parties and things like that. And how much of that budget is going to attending to safety and protection of the guests. Being able to anticipate needs, things like, food and beverage facilities, backup plans, things like that. It's really important to get food allergy information. It's really wonderful when you have somebody who is, celiac, gluten allergy, celiac, and other food things. And you're like, oh, I read your intake form and I have all of this stuff over here for you. And they feel so grateful and well taken care of, even without the psychedelics on board. And so I think it's really important for us to be like, well, how intentional are we going to get and how much are we taking care of? Or if it's, a group of friends getting together and it's like a bring your own snacks type of vibe also, right? And how does that shift what hosting looks like for you? Backup plans for rain and inclement weather are always really important, especially given climate change and how many music festivals and things are getting canceled. I mean, Texas eclipse last year, they had to shut the party down before the eclipse happened. And what happens when you have, 80,000 people who are probably not sober and you're telling them to evacuate right? There's a lot of safety planning that goes into that. And so making sure that you have the communication between your logistics team to be able to do that. Going into prepping, making sure that you're communicating with everyone, that you've laid down your orientation and agreements, packing lists, meal planning, like boundaries and expectations. I have a standing agreement for the psychedelic parties that I have hosted, which is this isn't a place for you to engage in new sexual experiences with people you don't have pre-established consent boundaries with. And so if you set the stage that nobody at this party is here to get hit on or to get like to hook up with or whatever that looks like, you'd be surprised how many more women show up and drop deeper into the experience when they've been told that they are safe to actually drop into it because there's somebody there that's making sure that they're going to be safe and not assaulted. Like if you want to make the women at your parties feel safer, it's like get a team of sober people, that gets an organization like Groove Safe to be there, where there's like awareness of, hey, we're an anti-harassment team here. And it's like, oh, thank God. I've had people come up to me at the end of parties being like, I haven't had that much fun in years because I haven't felt safe enough to have that much fun. And so what kind of parties what kind of experiences are you looking for? When people arrive, like it is really important, right? Like you've done all of this planning and all of this preparation and all of this design, but like when actual more people show up, like it's unexpected. You don't know what people are coming in the door with, and you don't know how much grounding they're going to need to get them into the connection. I was at a ceremony a few years ago, and somebody showed up a couple hours late, and they are a nurse, and they were late because they saw a motorcycle accident on the freeway and ended up being the first responder for somebody who did not survive. And so what is it like when you are hosting a 40-person gathering and one person shows up because they just had a major traumatic experience? How does that shift the vibe? And how do we hold that person and that container to allow what needs to unfold without kind of bumming everybody else out or like shifting the intention of the container? And so you need to assess for unexpected surprises. You need to create an opening for new people to come in and introduce themselves and set a good example of what that looks like by coming in and saying, we're going to have an opening circle. We can do quick introductions and have a little like icebreaker session, because that really helps people like feel like they belong. Like what we're really looking for in these environments is a sense of belonging. And then infusing symbolism and ritual. So building an altar together, asking everybody to bring in something special. We did this for the ketamine circles. We're building a community altar, and we asked everybody to bring in an object or a photo of somebody to place on the altar during the experience. And that in itself becomes so meaning making. Talking to somebody and they're like, maybe it's the sharing circles that we're here for, and like the medicine is actually just like the extra part of it, and instead of the medicine and the sharing circles being the extra, like what if the focus actually shifts? And then I think sharing food together and sharing like movement and breath together. So anytime you can do like morning stretching, morning breath work as a group can really help people create that resonant field. And so the relational field, right? So if like all of that infrastructure is the skeleton of the party, the relational field is actually the nervous system. It's like how we get all of the sensation into us. So there's a couple of things like zoning and flow space, making sure that there's quiet areas and party areas and private areas, things that are, like supply areas that have, do not access signs on the doors, like these little things. And again, I love events here because I think things are so well thought out around bathroom signage and even amenities in the bathroom. even having, extra feminine products, having extra like condoms, earplugs, eye masks, any of those things that could help people change their sensation. Having a little like perfume station someplace or essential oil station might be nice. But really allowing people to move through the space in a way that feels like they can find themselves in it. Another factor of the relational field is participation and power and consent. Who's serving the medicine? Who's supplying the medicine? Who are the people in power? Right? Who's the person, who's the security people that's saying, "Oh no, I'm so sorry, you can't drive your car right now." And when those people have to activate, they also need to understand that even when they are not activated into their safety positions, that they are still viewed by the participants as somebody who holds authority and power. I've talked to dozens of facilitators, and they're like, I keep telling them to not pedestalize me. And I was like, yeah, it's not you. It's like the community is going to do that to you if you are in a position of power. You can't prevent it from happening. You can talk about it, but there still is this point of power. And so being a good energetic host would be being able to attune to what's happening, being able to be soft and stern and hold boundaries, being able to self-regulate, to be able to help people shift their regulation if they are too activated. You also don't want to get dysregulated by co-regulating with them. And so you have to have enough authority to be able to regulate yourself and navigate through other people's emotional changes. And then hold it like a containment, like holding the space without absorbing the chaos. And this is something for people who are new in harm reduction or kind of new in any sort of helping profession. It's like, you have to learn where your edges are. And so I think part of this is really being able to know how to not absorb the chaos around you. Once the experience is over, it's important to also close the container. We opened it together. We should close it together. And so that is, again, modeling healthy, meaningful closings to help capsule the experience and honoring the experience that we all just had together in a field. Being able to design aftercare, using integration as an ongoing practice, following up and support if somebody had a really big or unexpected experience. And what does that aftercare look like? For not only the individual, but for also the witnesses of what happened with that individual. And then getting feedback and debriefing with your team so you guys can learn how to do it better. The only way I've learned how to do it better is by doing it over and over and over again with my team. And then using transitional objects. I brought a whole bunch of samples of gifts that I have received over the years from different events that I've worked with. I work with an event producer who does a custom design necklace for every event. And so now I have a collection of necklaces from these events. And occasionally I'll be out at a party and see a matching necklace of mine, just like the fish socks thing, like the fish logo thing. It's like, oh, you were at that party. Like, oh yeah, I was at that. Oh, I remember, right. And it gives you this talking piece, but it also gives you something that you can carry, a physical representation of the memory. So if you aren't doing physical tokens, whether that's a budget prohibited or not, but sitting down and writing intentions together, giving everybody a notebook, like a little notebook that matches. I like it's full moon, and so little lunar calendar notebooks, or creating a symbolic action. And that might be everybody gets around the fire and burns their intentions together. And so really looking at ways that we can create connective branded experiences. And now I can open it up to kind of, talking about some different case discussions you guys can share. I'm going to invite Hannah back to come chat with me. But thank you so much. I hope that I can help you all create your own events and gatherings and productions together. And so feel free to reach out to me afterwards. Satara is back there too. She works for me. And so we've been out and about
Yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you,
Yeah,
Erica. I
thanks.
appreciated how you created the 6 pillars, and so many things came up for me that I want to talk to you about. When Erica and I were preparing for our conversation tonight, she prompted me to consider the psychedelic parties that I've been involved with and what's been standout across the spectrum. And so I wanted to share, like, I had some memories resurface as you were describing these pillars. And one thing that I remembered was a party that a friend of mine had. And it was him and his good friend that lived together. And part of their natural flow of the zones throughout their house made it so that one of the friends' bedrooms suddenly became the hangout for his friends. And then the other guy's bedroom became a hangout for his friends. And it no longer became a coherent, resonant field of us all being together. We just were naturally attracted to what was comfortable. And at the time that I was there, I felt fine because I was in a familiar space with my friends. But then after the event, speaking to the party hosts, they were like, yeah, we felt really sad to see people separated. And it didn't even dawn on me because I was like just hanging out with people that I knew. And so it was part of the curation of the space, and then also people valuing hanging with who they feel connected to, perhaps rather than exploring new connections. So that made me consider value as well as like, what is our orientation towards the other people in the space? And are we here to be curious about new relationships and new friendships?
I think that's such a great example of, right? Like, it's like, oh, I really want all of my friends to meet your friends. And then everybody gets together and they end up siloed in groups. And so there's a, you can create spaces, you can kind of create some boundaries around that, which is having the two people that are the owners of the bedrooms to be like, okay, like, I'm not going to hang out in my bedroom like because I want to meet, right? My intention is to make new friends. There's also something about substance, like, substance choice at those parties. I like to encourage most of the parties or producers and hosts that I've worked with is I like to have a no ketamine before 2 a.m. rule. Because like ketamine at 8 p.m. turns into like a mushy floor party and then nobody's actually hanging out together, right? And so this is when it comes into kind of like psychedelic drug pacing is like if we're supposed to be bonding together and like everybody's smoked way too much weed and now we're all just sitting together watching cartoons and like and have the munchies instead of actually bonding. There's so many great tools that you can kind of add in. There's a company called or any company that has the conversation decks of like, questions to ask people. Like, let's play a quick game. What's a really easy game that we can play that's like a bonding game together? It could just be like going around and asking each other questions. There was a event that I worked, small event, 30 people, and most people knew each other. But there were a few like, like a new girlfriend or a new person who just like came into the circle last year. And when everybody arrived, they had dinner, they came back together and everybody sat in a circle. And instead of introducing themselves, they introduced somebody else in the circle and told the story about how they met. And then it was like, oh, like I met you, at Burning Man 5 years ago. And we ended up like going on this crazy adventure together. And then that person has to introduce somebody else in the circle with their like origin story. And it was such a lovely experience for the new people to show up to like hear the little bits of information about people so they could actually have those conversations later on in the weekend. And so there's like little bits of ways of like, okay, let's bring everyone together to open it. And even if it fractures off, we're still going to bring everybody together for the close of it. But those main host people, like the people who have power, the people who have, rooms, bedrooms in the house of the party, Like it could be that they all agree that they're going to make sure that if like that happens, they're like, oh shit, like 4 of my friends are hanging out in my bedroom with me. Hey guys, let's like go, raid the kitchen or prep some food. Giving people small, easy activities to do. It is also something I when I host in my home, I have midnight oven snacks and I ask everybody to bring their favorite oven snack with them. And then whoever is feeling like squirrely, like they don't know what to do in the middle of the party, they can, as long as they can go turn on the oven and set the oven, they can like make a little cute snack plate and serve it to everybody. And so it kind of gives the busyness something to do. That could be like a 20-minute solo activity for a nervous system reset.
Yeah. This makes me think also of the energetic attunement as the host and like being able to track stagnancy. And if the stagnancy is like, okay, people are just really dropping in, they're feeling melty, they're feeling cuddly, or is there like something there where transformation could be catalyzed by maybe breaking up that energy and inviting something like a task or a game? And my favorite containers always involve some sort of icebreaker of authentic relating and intimacy to really warm up the space. And I had a couple other things come to mind that I want to share. I'm going to reference my notes for this. I always like when I'm invited to a party where they pre-pack supplement stacks. So it's like upon arrival, they're like, this is for you. And then 3 hours later, the timer goes off and it's like, we all get together with our hydration and our supplement stack. And then they have it for the next day or whatever the recommended protocol is. So that's a super high value. And I've been adopting that more in my personal practice to then become knowledgeable and share that with folks that I'm sharing substances with as well.
There is actually, it's behind this. I wonder if I can go steal it right now. Hold on. I brought like samples of things that I've used at parties before if you guys wanted to like check it out. But in here I also have from the company Rave RX, I think it is. They've made these before, during, and after MDMA supplement packs. They're great if you're hosting a party, whether you're serving MDMA or you know that people are taking MDMA. These are like great things to include in gift bags. They're great things to include in like the drawer of the guest bathroom, things like that. And so there's like great ways to create more like awareness when you're hosting. And so, yes, supplement packs.
Yeah, I love that. And also hydration, like supporting people with having electrolytes. And my favorite, most recent party, they had like Chinese herbal tea that was nutrient and electrolyte dense. That was so good. And it was a contribution of one of the people attending the parties, but it was just so thoughtful and delicious. And to have also like the density of like a ceramic mug that holds a hot drink is also really grounding for me when I'm on psychedelics.
I think those are great, right? Like bringing tea. You could actually have your own little bit of branding for yourself and be like, I actually have a friend, Julia. She makes midnight soup for every single party. She's like, I got the soup. And she'll come in and she'll make this giant pot of vegetable soup and then heat it up at midnight. And we have like midnight soup in the middle of the party. And so like everybody's like, oh, I wonder what soup she's going to make this time, right? There's almost this like expectation. And there is the sense of belonging, the feeling like you're part of a community, feeling like you're valued, like even without the substances, right? This is the solution for loneliness, is being able to be valued and seen in your community. And so I love that. I love electrolytes. The other thing that I love is pre-pasted compostable toothbrushes. Because if there's one thing that can change your headspace on a psychedelic trip is like brushing your teeth. It feels so good. It like changes your whole perspective. And so like little things like that I always have extra toothbrushes with me. That's actually one of the things that I carry with me.
Yeah, totally. I am known in the psychedelic space as a peppermint princess. And so I'm very passionate about peppermint oil, and I will dose people with that directly. Also, peppermint in a spray bottle with water can be very refreshing on the chest or over the face if someone is warm or if you're in an environment that's really hot. So I have my little bag of tricks that has like all my essential oils and tinctures that are all for sharing. And another thing that came up for me, well, two pieces, is agreements around adding substances and even smoking. Like, I like to check in with folks, like, is everyone cool with me using cannabis here? Is everyone cool with me smoking tobacco? Because that's not always desired as an addition, whether that's in the container physically or just in the energetics. And like, personally, I don't really want to be at parties where people are using cigarettes and vaping. So that's a part of my personal context that's important to be known.
Absolutely. And this is where container design comes in. Is there a smoking section? Like, because there are going to be some people who are going, right? It might be like this is discouraged. And same thing with cell phones, right? I love a party that has a great cell phone charging station. That's like everybody leave their cell phones over here at the charging station. If you need to check your cell phone, you can check it at the charging station, but we don't want people in the environment poking their phones. So if you need to use your phone, I'm not telling you can't use your phone. People have emergencies. People are doctors, But if you like, we have a no cell phone zone and a designated smoking zone. And so really being able to look at the flow and zoning of what you're designing to make sure that you're meeting the majority of the needs of the majority of your guests.
Yeah, and considering a more like casual or personal context, or if I were hosting, I would maybe want to be notified if people are going to add another substance or psychedelic to what we're already journeying with. It's like I might just start witnessing something weird and then be like, wow, I'm surprised that that's happening. And then like not know that they just took something else. So I think I like to be informed of that as a host.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are going at this, this is another story that just came up for me, which was a friend of mine was invited to a mushroom ceremony, and she overheard two of the people at the mushroom ceremony talk about the possibility of taking MDMA before the psilocybin dose. And that was like, she was like, that's not what I signed up for. I came here to come to a psilocybin circle. And now there's people on poly substance and it's like not the right vibe, and addressed it with the facilitator. And the facilitator even kind of like doubled down and was like, well, they said they were really nervous and they wanted to take something to like, take to help with the come up and everything else. And she was like, yeah, but like, you didn't tell the rest of us that that was happening. And like, that's not fair to the rest of the people in the circle, that there are people that are on polysubstance or other substances. And the facilitator actually then heard the feedback and then changed the decision around that to respect the rest of the group. But stuff like that happens all the time. And it's really interesting, especially with things like, dissociatives or cannabis or even alcohol getting added on top of something. If you're going to a psychedelic party or an event, a lot of the psychedelic parties are like, we have a no cocaine rule because the energy of that medicine becomes so egocentric that we actually don't want that type of energy here. And so it's okay for hosts and people who are designing it to say, no alcohol, no cocaine, like no additional substances. I know a lot of like ayahuasca facilitators that say, a lot of people are using hape around in the plant medicine space. And it's like, do you allow a hape or do you not allow a hape, like in your ayahuasca circles? And I've seen it get out of hand, and I've seen it like, fluctuate in these environments. But it's an important thing to just be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And Another value thing that came up for me when you were speaking is like how much I do appreciate being in my body and feeling myself. And I'm the type of person that like will ask people to lower their voice or like be considerate of shared space. And so I need that in my context, that people are receptive to being like asked to adjust. And this came up for me even with you naming the cocaine thing. It's like people do lose a sensitivity to their speaking volume, and I will be there to kindly request a lower volume. And I also really value when there's tools to help us come into body. So things like Theraguns, I have a car buffer. There's a device called a yoga wheel that you like arch your spine over. That's very popular in me and my community. And then also I love to offer massage. So I'm always coming forward with my favorite massage oils and maybe a blanket or a sheet that I can invite people to lay down on when I'm in the appropriate context to invite that type of connection.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, also physical touch in these in psychedelic environments, right? Physical touch can get a little like wonky depending on how it's offered and how it's received. But I think it's also really important in psychedelic sensitive environments that if you say, would you like a massage? And somebody like, right, the rejection sometimes is so, it's hard to be like, actually, no, I don't want that right now. And I don't want to hurt your feelings around that. And like, having people in your community practice saying no and letting people know that it's okay for somebody to say no and that you shouldn't take it personally because what they're doing is sharing their no with you. And like, but when drugs are involved, like there's heightened feelings and there's, oh, did I cross a boundary by even asking? And there's having harm reduction people, safety people, so like sober people at the party who can help kind of smooth over those conflicts. I was working working a birthday party a couple of years ago. That was a multi-day experience, and this boyfriend girlfriend partners got into some argument because she didn't think that he was going to be drinking alcohol, and he was like doing shots with his friends, and they got into this like this conflict where neither of them could see their way out of it. And somebody brought it to my attention and I said, hey, are you guys willing to talk? And we like sat down and talked a little bit about it. And my conclusion was, guys, we're like in the middle of a party. And so like, could we actually just table it until you guys get home and you can have like a longer, deeper process around this? But like, both of you are already altered and you're speaking in loops. And like the actual solution to this is for you guys to be like, I love you, and we're going to table it and get back to it when we're sober. And they both were like, yeah, that seems like the better option. And then they went back to the party and enjoyed the party because the two of them, without somebody intervening, the two of them would have been there for like 4 or 5 hours just talking in loops around each other. And they just needed somebody to be like, now's not the right time. And they were like, oh, it's not the right time. We are in the middle of a party. And like, right, something like that can really help. But also when situations like that arise, not having somebody there can like really derail the energetic field of the party.
Yeah. And I want to say two things in response to that, because what feels important for me when I'm partying in this way is honoring the like collaboration of the vibe. And so receiving people's consent to like want to be in a resonant field. And so that means that there's something funky, that they're open to receiving collaboration to like come back in. And I think the conscious compartmentalization can very much be a gift in those moments. And then the other piece, when I was bringing up the physical touch, is I feel it's important for people also in the container I would love to create to agree to the evolving truth. So I might invite someone into touch connection and explore it for as long as it's true, and then be like, hey, I'm complete. I'm going to carry on to the next thing. And my desire is that that is received and like honored, respected. And if that person feels some type of way, that like they're a resource to know how to hold themselves through that.
Absolutely. I think those are great agreements. And that's also, right, that goes into the design of the guest list, right? When you're hosting a party, you you don't want the person to RSVP to be like, yeah, I think I'm going to show up unless something better comes along. Like, no, wrong, wrong. And so sometimes you actually have to like make it's like I want you to be like, yes, I'm all in on this and like help create the resonant field. And if you're not there for this one this time, like that's okay too. I only want people who are showing up who are like an enthusiastic yes to be able to co-creating a container together.
Yeah, beautiful. I think I have maybe one or two things to share and then we'll turn it to the audience. Okay, yeah. So, something I personally really value when partying with psychedelics is water. So, there was a recent journey that I was in where it was an amazing venue and it was an intimate group, but there was no shower. And we were only there like through the evening and through the night, and some people spent the night. But my temperature can fluctuate so much and I can get really uncomfortable. And so a cold shower or a hot shower, if I'm really cold, can be really regulating to my system. And I think it was the first time using that psychedelic where I didn't have water access, where I really was able to see how much of a value it is. And so I love being at a venue that has a nice saltwater hot tub. Outdoor showers are definitely my favorite. Baths as well. Like I like taking a bath with my friends. So those are the types of things that come to mind when I think about what creates comfort in my body.
Yeah. I also am a hot tub person, but I'm also kind of like a house cat. And there's this like, you know, in an altered state of consciousness, like really hard to change the state from dry to wet and then wet to dry. And like sometimes that can get a little like, I don't know if I'm going to do that right now. Like, right. Cause it can be really intense. Especially wintertime hot tubs. And then you have to like get out and it's cold and like, right. It's like you know, do you really want to do I want to go through the temperature fluctuation? And other times I'm like, oh, it's so easy right now. But having the option, and I also, right, having an option to shower, especially if somebody soils themselves or hurts themselves or something like that, like making sure that the venue, the environment has the resources that you need or that you can bring in the resources that you need.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun to recall these memories and think about the curation of my future too. This has like inspired me to really step into my psychedelic hostess embodiment.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens.
Thank you. Sweet. Well, we'll take a chunk of time where Paxton will pass around the mic to hear your questions, and then we'll close out with some rapid fire between you and I.
Great. Yeah. To rapid fire? Yeah.
Hi, Maxwell. So I've had a lot of years of experience with psychedelics. I've also worked in event coordination, event planning. I also have a background in like trauma-informed psychology, that sort of thing. And I have no idea how to even get involved in this sort of thing because like I tried going on like LinkedIn or looking up like psychedelic alpha, like psychedelic jobs, and I just like have no idea how to even get into the field of supporting psychedelic events. It is really like my life's calling. It's kind of the thing that I want to do the most, but I don't know where to start.
Oh goodness. I mean, you're welcome. We're hopefully doing a few sanctuary events, public events this year. Which would be, I think, Lightning in a Bottle and High Vibe Fest, and we'll be here at District 216. There's a problem with psychedelic harm reduction, which is it is extremely underfunded. And oftentimes is, you know, done as like a service to the community. And as Hannah said, like, this is the first time we're talking about psychedelic hospitality. And so I kind of like paved the way for looking at it this way. I think that there's a way for event producers like and people who are hosting events to want to value this type of service and consultancy. I'm finding that more and more in the private sector of you know, people in like tech and finance being like, I want to throw a 40th birthday, and like it's, they don't want to hire a wedding planner. Actually, here's a great story is we got hired to work an event in Mexico. The person last minute, we were like, the last 2 weeks, we're like, oops, we need a safety person, right? Which is oftentimes my first interaction with new clients is the like, oh, somebody said I needed to hire you because we need to hire you. And then I meet the event production team, and they hired like basically a wedding planner to plan this party because that's like what's available out there. And they were planning on taking New Year's Eve MDMA at like 10 p.m. so they could be at peak during that time. And the event planner planned a large sushi buffet at midnight on that same night. And I was like, no one's going to eat that. Like, no, do not feed high people. Like, that sounds awful, right? And so part of it is like, you need to get in on these event producers to be like more mindful, but the people who are doing the events are not going to tell these event producers that they're also planning on doing illegal things. Right. And so there's like this kind of like secretive line of like, who's on the in and who's on the outs, and like how far does that range go? But really, I mean, COVID killed the events industry, and we're slowly trying to bring it back. But really, like, talk after, email me. If any of you guys is there somebody here who wants to plan your psychedelic party? You can talk to Maxwell after this, or come and find me. But really helping people kind of go into event design and production design with the awareness that whether or not we're saying it, like there's going to be high people there. And like, what are we going to do when like, a naked person climbs the stage infrastructure, and like, who's going to handle that? And like, right. And I'm so glad that I got to kind of cut my teeth in the festival crisis world for the years that I did. But we can talk about creative ideas around it.
So I'm curious on like tips or your philosophy around handling someone in a container that is like clearly out of line. There's like different contexts, like in a ceremonial context, that's a more therapeutic environment, right? Someone's in crisis. That's kind of a different question than what I'm looking for here. But like specifically someone in a more social environment that's like very out of line, making a lot of people uncomfortable, right? The traditional example of this is a man making women uncomfortable. And I've noticed like the times that I've seen this is there's like this adversarial relationship that develops to this person where people just want him gone and to leave. And there's like this us versus them thing. Makes total sense. But I'm also of the opinion that like these people need education and inclusion, because when they're pushed out, there's just creating an environment where they'll be more likely to act out in the future. So I'm just curious if you have like anything you would share like around that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been in many of those situations where we've had to, right. And it's also one of those things where this person is altered and they can't drive or leave. And so making them leave is also a safety risk. Ideally, if the agreements and intention are and guest list is curated correctly, right, then that won't, right, that shouldn't happen. And if it and informing everyone that there's a production crew, like safety team there, that like the first time he did it, before he pissed everybody off, it should have been brought to the attention. So then there's not, so the build to the being adversarial isn't there. I've definitely, and I try to do it as like sweetly and calmly as I possibly can to intervene. I was at an event a few years ago where actually it was a female performer who was writing poetry on a typewriter as like this performance piece, and one of the guys kept coming over and kind of like hitting on her, and she like took a break and came over and said, "Hey, this guy keeps like talking to me." And I was like, "Which one?" And she pointed him out. And she like went to the bathroom and sat back down, and I saw him walk back over to her, and I grabbed like two of the guys who are working, and I was like, "We need to distract this guy." And so we all got in between him and the woman on the typewriter, and we were like, "Hey, come check out this thing with us." And literally just like energetically found him something else to pay attention to. As like, I didn't want to be like, "Hey, stop talking to her." But like, if he would have come at and been like, "Oh no, I want to talk to the child," I was like, no, actually, like, she doesn't want to be talked to right now. And so let's go do something else. Not like, "Hey, you're harassing her." It's like now's not the time to do that. And so we're going to move on to something else. Do you want to do something else with me? And like, because of my positionality of power, it's like, I don't want to make a scene and tell you that you can't harass this person. And like, just me coming up and having the conversation of being like, "Oh, you need to do something else right now," like kicked into the like, "Okay, I'll go do," like, I don't want to make a bigger scene than I already am. And so really trying to like run interference so things don't escalate is a really good thing to do. There's also, I've talked to bartenders to tell people to like under pour shots for people. I've been in environments where the party has been like a little too smushy, and was, like cleared the ketamine plate, and I was like, "I'll just clean this up and refill this," and then I disappear for 45 minutes with it to like have everybody go back to the party, right? So there's little ways to harm reduction, like not overserve anyone and to intervene in a way. And so if there is a point where somebody is getting to the point where they need to be removed from the party, oftentimes it's like, "Let's go for a walk." Right. And this is why having a multi-pronged, multi-person production team is useful, right? Because if you're the only person in charge, you can't leave the party. And if somebody needs to go for like a 20-minute reset walk, you need to be able to send somebody to go do that and still manage the party. And so you have to have a team of people to be able to do it. We actually had at the most recent party, we had somebody who got paranoid and thought that they had offended somebody, and all of a sudden somebody knocked on my bedroom door at like 2 a.m, and they were like, "Hey, somebody's trying to leave." And I was like, oh no, like, nobody's leaving the property right now. Like, lock the gate, like, keys in the fishbowl, as the boomer generation used to do. But like, coming out and being like, "This isn't possible," and really trying to negotiate with this person. And I was like, "Listen, I am not telling you that we are like, holding you against your will. Like, I am telling you that leaving this party at 3 a.m, dressed in a Tootsie Roll dress, is not the appropriate thing to leave this party in. So like, if you want to leave, like, go put on a collared shirt and a real pair of pants and make it look like you're driving to work and not leaving a party in the middle of the night. And like, what can we do? Like, to delay the time that this person left to get as much sobriety into their system as I possibly could. And they ended up, we're like, "Whatever, I'll just leave it at sunrise." And I was like, "Great, thanks." Right. But like, sometimes you do have to like stand up in this authority to be like, "Hey, what's happening right now has to stop." And like, there's like a really easy way to stop it. And then there's a more difficult way to stop it. Like, how can we make it more easeful for everyone? And hopefully people aren't so intoxicated that when you tell them to stop hitting on someone, that they actually like can hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, like, I'll just share in my own experience in that situation is really approaching the person like you're their friend and trying to help them. And like in particular with men that are have an agenda and are caught in their head and are not able to really feel into the experience that people are having around them, is just tuning them like deeper into their heart and into feeling. And actually, I think that's done by modeling it to them and really feeling the situation they're in and like, yeah, creating a relational field between the two of you. So
Right.
that's
Right.
just, mhm.
It's one of those like, I am here to make sure that everybody's having the best time they possibly can.
Including
Like,
you.
Right.
Yeah.
And including you. And so like, there seems to be some like edginess. Like, why don't you just take a break from hanging out with those people for a minute and reset yourself? Seems like a good idea. Like, I'll hang out with you.
Mhm.
Right. And so it doesn't feel like you're pushing them away. You're actually bringing them in, but like removing them, but moving them away from that situation.
Yeah. And I have one little fun tip that you may enjoy in regard to hosting. And I do this at parties and in private ceremonies, but that is a volcano vaporizer for people that like tobacco, CBD, or cannabis. I don't know if you know the device, but it's a little vaporized device. Bring some organic tobacco, some organic CBD, cannabis, a whole kit of herbs and essential oils. And you can really blow people's mind with a really clean, pure, and easy on the lungs smoke that like pairs amazingly well with various medicines. And I've blown a lot of minds by doing that. So test that out, my friends.
I love that everybody kind of has their own little like brand of like what they bring to the party. And so there's like massage and somatic stuff. There's like volcano vapes. Like, I can't wait to hear what else everybody has. A tank of nitrous. Ew.
Hi, my name is Sean. That was a great presentation. Thank you for that. I feel a sort of connectivity because I've worked in hospitality and restaurants and hotels my entire life, and obviously you have that experience as well. And I have a question or like a relating experience because I've had the pleasure of like whether it's working in soup kitchens at Christmas time and feeding people experiencing homelessness, or taking care of people with 8-figure net worths that are just far beyond anything I could think about. It allows me to see a through line of humanity in everyone. It allows me to see, no matter how much people think you're worth or how much you think you're worth or where you are in this world, everyone needs to eat, everyone needs to drink. And it creates a certain level of humanity. And there's a through line there that I've learned to experience and appreciate. And so in your experience with both hospitality and with psychedelics, have there been things that you've seen from your own vantage point, your own experience, that allow you to see that through line as well between psychedelics and hospitality? And second part, has anyone that you've had the experience of taking care of shown you anything new that you hadn't, been aware of or noticed before from their perspective?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, I find a through line through all of them. And, really, this like pendulum swing of seeing people in their humanity and seeing people who love to play, seeing how much everybody loves to play, like tapping into that inner child, tapping into that inner gratitude. Laughter is kind of pervasive across the board. When you can have really joyful experiences. I cut my teeth as a social worker doing community mental health in South Central at like Exodus Recovery in Brantman, and got to see really how the disparity that exists in Los Angeles, the income disparity in our communities. And I actually highly recommend, especially to high net worth individuals who might be slightly ego inflated by psychedelics, that the cure for that is volunteerism in the homeless community. Because, if you think AI is going to save us all, like, you're not thinking of all. You're not thinking of everybody. Because if we're talking about everybody, we got a really far way to go to get humanity up to where we're supposed to be. We're very, very, very much out of balance. But I find that there's gratitude, right? That's the through line, especially in psychedelics. Because being able to be vulnerable and be energetically held is like pervasive through all of it when you get to these really expanded states. And when you get to these really dark spaces, the shadow spaces themselves, right? That darkness also exists in all of us. And so I really see that as a through line. And I really, have kind of pendulum swung between like these worlds of, high net worth psychedelic party things along with doing some community mental health work. And I think that keeps my perspective wide. Because if you're not reaching out to communities that are more vulnerable or more disenfranchised than you are, then like you're starting to silo your view of the world. And so, I think the solution is, not just writing a check, but showing up.
Let's go.
Yes. You mentioned somebody coming.
You mentioned someone showing up to the party late because they had witnessed a traumatic accident. Yeah. And that the collective paused to hold space for that individual. Where's the spectrum on that of when the collective needs to pause for the individual and where like they almost got an offender member, but nothing happened? You're late. You need to assimilate to the collective rather than the collective pausing for the person that's having a moment. Like, how do you gauge the moment? Because let's say some people are more inclined to have moments and other people never have moments when maybe they should allow themselves. So how do you navigate that as a facilitator for the group experience?
Well, in this specific case, the ceremony that we were in had already started. So none of us actually found out until like we finished for that evening. Because the individual who showed up was like, I'm not going into that space because I know I'm super late. And so they basically like sat out like and hung out in the kitchen and outside until the ceremony was finished, but communicated with the organizer and the facilitator, and the facilitator and organizer came out and checked in with the individual, but didn't disrupt the energy of the group in the moment. And then during that late night experience, the individual who experienced the trauma shared with a few people, and we ended up doing a sharing circle the following morning instead of 2 days. So that person had a space to kind of share and process. That individual decided that she wasn't going, like when she arrived, that she wasn't going to disturb the ceremony or drink any medicine. And then we did an integration circle the following morning, and they were still unsure of whether or not they were going to participate, but they came and dropped things off. But I think it's a great question. It's actually, I was just discussing kind of these like higher need individuals that are repetitive in their like overextending or pushing boundaries of the community. And oftentimes that is where kind of leadership or the host team has a conversation with that person, as to like how it's affecting the greater group. And is this something that they can do one-on-one processing with? And at times there have been individuals that have been asked to take a pause from community or not be invited back for a year based on their behavior, but have worked with leadership and the people that hold the power of the group to be able to come back into community. And some people do, and some people don't.
Nice question. Thanks for your talk, Erica. This is great. This is maybe a little outside than it should. But I want to put together an experience for my parents. And obviously I want it to be a positive experience for them. But I also very much so, kids, does this even work?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I want to ensure that it's not an upsetting experience for them. So since you're involved with harm reduction, should that happen and they sort of get in a bad space, what do you have like some basic guidelines on things I can do to help them kind of navigate through that?
Yeah. Depends on the medicine, depends on the dosing, depends on what medications they're on. You know, when you get into the 65 plus community of psychedelic users, like there's, you got to watch out for some heart medication and some other things that are happening depending on substance and dosing.
This will probably be moderately dosed psilocybin.
Okay. Which is fairly like, you know, I think making sure that they both have an opportunity to have some alone time, and some together processing time, and kind of setting the stage for them to, you know, have all the tools to be able to, you know, get a gravity blanket and some headphones and an eye mask and like allow them to control the music and allow like, right. There might be some crying. There might be some, right. And especially with long-term partnership and novel psychedelic experience, sometimes that codependency stuff shows up. And it's like, oh no, like, did I say something to make my lovely wife cry? And like, then you get into your internal process. And so the question would be, is the intention for them to have a shared experience or for them to have their own individual experiences? And I think that's where you give the power and autonomy back to them. What do you actually want this to look like? And really being able to, you know, is this something that is connective for the two of you, or is this something that is a shared expansive state? And have them get really clear on kind of why they're doing this. And then kind of craft it for them of like, you know, what happens if somebody gets nauseous and throws up, and does the other one want to caretake during that experience? And so having not only you there, but another, obviously don't work alone. And so having another person so that if you want to go sit with your mom and you don't want to leave your dad alone, that there's somebody to keep him company, and vice versa, of just having an extra person there, I think can be really beneficial. I would also say get their favorite foods for afterwards. My favorite food for anything afterwards is always fresh pineapple, and ideally a fruit mandala. Like cut it up really pretty and like make an actual mandala out of all of the like fruit slices and everything else, because everything looks prettier on psychedelics. So like if you bring it out, they're like, whoa! It's like even right. You know, you want to bring out the like plastic container of sliced melon. You want to like make, right? This is like the part of hosting where you like really want to make it look beautiful. I think, you know, even when you set up like snacks here, everything looks beautiful. And so really being able to like make it feel like people are intentionally caring for you. Oh, did that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
This will be our last question from the audience.
In terms of logistics of organizing events, do participants have, is it like an apothecary of things that you're offering, and who's deciding what to take and the dosage and all of that?
So it depends on who's the like host of the party, right? I get hired to work for other people for a lot of these parties. I also host some of my own, but for a lot of the parties that I work for, I can sit down with the host and kind of, you know, talk about, you know, things like psychedelic tolerance, that like if you're planning on taking LSD today, like the mushrooms aren't going to work tomorrow. And so like, what's the pacing of it is a really big question, because what we know is LSD trumps everything. Like, right? You take LSD with anything and then you feel the LSD more than anything else. Like, and so you really want to, you know, maybe it's a night 1 is the MDMA night because it's really heart opening, and night 2 is the LSD night because now that everybody feels warm and connected, we can get weird together, right? If you go the opposite way, you look at things like length of experience, length of time that you are together. It's a different thing if it's 48 hours versus 4 days versus 7 days versus, 14 days at Burning Man if you're doing build and strike, and what the pacing of substances might look like for 14 straight days. Because that's also important, is to be able to take breaks and to pace things, and to maybe we do morning cacao ceremony with stretching as a way to have these more connective experiences, versus bringing the nitrous tank to the party and just having everybody get weird, and so it depends on what the host does. It depends on what the intention is of the party and the length of the party. And so it's kind of like a matrix. How many people, right? I think it's, depending on the size of the party, if it's, you and 8 to 10 friends in your living room versus, a 50-person party, and resources and expenses and length of time. And so, in this psychedelically friendly, decriminalized future that we're going to live in, right now, we're at the golden age of unregulated psychedelics because the pharmaceutical companies are coming for them. And so right now, and they're coming for the natural medicines too. And so right now, it's we actually are in the golden age where we can access a variety of substances that, we have access to reagent kits and testing labs and things like that, where hopefully we're doing the best we can to make it as safe as we can.
Awesome questions, audience. I have a final few questions for you, and they're rapid fire style. So my suggestion is just to share the first thing that comes to mind. And my first question is there a substance you haven't yet tried, but you're fascinated with and desire to experience?
No. No, I would say the thing that I'm most fascinated with right now is ibogaine, but I'm not very excited to try it.
That's super fair. Yeah. And if you could be in a transformative container with anyone dead or alive and with any psychedelic, who's there? What's the vibe? And what medicine are you taking?
Dead or alive? I would can I choose the age at which I engage them? I would actually really love to eat LSD with Paul McCartney at some point. But not 80-year-old Paul McCartney. I want 45-year-old Paul McCartney, or even 27-year-old Paul McCartney. Yeah, I would probably say eat acid with the Beatles or Trey. Yeah, I would probably eat acid with Trey Anastasio. Do some nitrous with Mike Gordon.
And my final question for you is, will you please share about an impactful psychedelic experience that's shaped you?
Impactful psychedelic experience that has shaped me. Yeah. I would have to say I'm gonna go with a couple years ago when I was in Costa Rica, and I went as at a retreat center, and we were drinking ayahuasca, and on the last night of the ayahuasca journey, I had this little DMT entity thing that looked like a little beaked bird that was jumping in and out of my body and making me very nauseous as it was doing so. And so I finally said something like, stop it. And it didn't realize that I recognized it, and it like stopped for a second, and then it sat on my shoulder, and we merged consciousness and like downloaded each other's consciousness into each other. And then I grew this like crazy blue silver exoskeleton, and my eyes turned like hexagonal, like my vision turned hexagonal, like ultraviolet for like 45 minutes. And I became merged with a DMT bug. And I thought to myself, this would be terrifying if I wasn't so curious about it, right? And ever since then, I hear these stories from like basically about like the DMT ayahuasca Pokemon. You can hear them from different like curanderos. They talk about the little entities that run around the jungle and things like that, and they catch them like Pokemon and like use them to like fight other shamans in the Amazon, just like the Pokemon story. And there's a great narrative around all of these DMT entities. And I feel like I have lived experience that is like a true thing. And it also probably makes me seem insane. But it was probably like a really impactful, insane, like overwhelming merged experience, like merged consciousness experience. That kind of validated these like jungle narratives around the little spirit entities that that exist in DMT ayahuasca land. And so that was probably like the weirdest psychedelic experience that I've had in recent years.
Thank you for sharing. I think that's amazing.
Sure.
Cool. Well, thank you, Erica, for bringing your expertise of psychedelic hospitality to us tonight at the District House. And thank you, everyone, for joining in on this conversation. And come again next week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.